Good evening, guys. It is Wednesday, March 3rd, 2025. This Bathrobe business. I'm Georgi Oganov. I'm all out of decaf coffee, but I still have the news. So let's jump into it. So yesterday was Trump's big speech. I did end up listening to it this morning on the way into work. A lot of it was kind of like a campaign speech, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but it didn't really elaborate much on the tariff policy. However, one thing he did mention in the speech, I will talk about in today's video because it actually does have the potential to have major impacts on the U.S. economy for not just the near term, but for the next 100 years. Not a small thing. So, first, let's start with some of the tariff exemptions that have come into play. So, Trump has granted an exemption for automakers for up to a month. It's still unclear if this is going to be extended, but essentially, it's going to be any cars produced outside of the US that are still uh, owned by American companies are exempt from the tax. So, facilities that are like in Mexico or Canada can still be imported in at no tax. Now, it's still actually unclear whether this covers car parts as well because oftentimes even the cars that are assembled here in the United States, their parts are fabricated elsewhere. Currently, that's actually still unclear, including it's highlighted in this article that it hasn't been made clear to the automakers as well, but there's at least a 30-day reprieve. In addition, it does seem like some agricultural exemptions might be made. While this one isn't official yet, it did say that the Trump administration is weighing agricultural exemptions from Canada and Mexico. Probably a good strategy to take simply because that would definitely cause a rise in inflation. If there's no way that so much produce is produced in Mexico, it coming in would not inflate drastically if they had a 25% tariff. We'll see if that comes to fruition in the next day or two. But so far, that I would say I would bet on the chance that they're not going to allow those tariffs to go in effect onto produce. Speaking of tariffs, so I'm going to share this article with you guys. So Apple unveiled the new MacBook Air, and the new model is actually $100 cheaper than it was previously. This is interesting for multiple reasons. So the first reason is don't forget the 10% tariff that went into effect in January in China on Chinese products is still in effect. And now there's another 10% that is in effect. So we're already at 20%. And Apple is not cutting is actually cutting its price, not raising it. Now, partly this is because Apple is kind of in dire straits. They have not been in such a weak position in a long, long time. Their phones are not selling as well as they have. Their MacBooks were kind of their only saving grace, but also their AI doesn't seem to be streamlining as quickly as they like. Let's also not forget that the Vision Pro, someone said that it's still for sale, but I have not seen them. I know they are not being manufactured. They are a defunct, discontinued item. There may be some that are still on sale here or there, but I've spent time in multiple stores since the holidays, all throughout the holidays. I did not see a Vision Pro anywhere. So Apple has had several bad launches, partly with their Vision Pro and now with AI. And their phones also are just not selling as quickly as they like, both domestically and international. So Apple can't afford not to cut prices. They're desperate. They have to. But what's interesting here is this might illustrate Trump's point. So this whole time, Donald Trump is saying that don't worry, prices aren't going to go up because the tariffs don't matter for us. Other countries are going to pay for it. You have to kind of parse through the words to kind of get to the thinking that is behind Donald Trump. He's not the most eloquent speaker, that's for sure. He speaks in generalities, but not in specifics. What I believe Trump means is that the United States is a premium market. We are the world's number one consumers. We are the number one drivers of the economy. Even though China manufactures everything, we're the ones that buy it. So Trump's argument is, look, one way or another, they're going to sell to us regardless of what we do. We could pass a 10% tariff. We can pass a 25% tariff. They're still going to sell to us. And if they start raising their prices, we just won't buy it. So the argument is they're just going to cut their prices and we're going to reap the benefits of it. So we're going to be able to tax them, get revenue, and the individual consumer is not going to reap the cost. And with Apple, so far that seems to be true. I think with a lot of these countries, it could end up being true. The way Canada is fighting these tariffs, even harder than Mexico, makes you think that maybe Trump's theory could come to fruition. Now, again, I'm not a tariffs guy, I'm more free trade, but so far, I think he is winning this argument. Currently, Trudeau is on the phone with Trump on a daily basis. He was on the phone with him again today. He's filing with the World Trade Organization, trying to get something done so that these tariffs don't go into place. So Canada is desperate to not have these tariffs because I think Trump's theory of they're going to pay for it one way or another is going to be true, especially when it comes to Canada. I think Mexico is in a much stronger position, seeing as how they're our number one trading partner. They're a much more sophisticated partner as far as trading with the amount of items that are produced in Mexico versus Canada. So I think with Mexico, it's a little bit different. And with China, it's a little bit different, seeing as how China produces a lot of sophisticated parts as well, and they do produce premium products. But with Canada, I think there's a lot of advantage, and Trump is kind of exposing that. We'll see what happens with other companies. I think after that 30-day tariff with auto manufacturers expires, it'll be incredibly telling of what happens with prices. Will these car companies start raising prices? I think that Trump is right, and they will not. That a lot of these car companies that are importing into the U.S. can't afford to cut their bottom have a drop in sales by any standard. So in other words, they're just going to eat the cost, seeing as how they're still in a profitable position. Next story I'm going to talk about is something that Trump mentioned during the State of the Union address yesterday, and that was to create the Office of Shipbuilding. So this is actually a really good idea. Well, actually, it's not as good of an idea as it is to repeal the Jones Act, but it's actually as good as it can. It's a law that I've talked about on this channel before. Let me make sure I'm sharing the screen with you guys. Yep, there we go. So it's a law I've talked about on this channel before. It's a law that was passed in the 1920s for various reasons, partly for domestic manufacturing, partly for security, etc. But essentially, essentially what the law says is that any items going from U.S. port to U.S. port have to be the ship has to be built by the United States. The crew has to be manned by the United States. So if you're going from one port to another, especially through internal waterways, canals, bays, like Hudson Bay, things like that, everything has to be U.S. That's kind of undercut a lot of our shipping capacity because it slowed us down and it added a lot of more cost and weight. Like, for example, when that huge Baltimore accident happened, we didn't really feel much of an inflationary pressure. There was some, but it wasn't as drastic as it should be, just simply because the system operates so inefficiently already that it didn't really change much of the equation. So why this would change is if the United States actually did start to build more commercial shipping and there were more ships on the market, it would actually increase capacity of flow and reduce cost. One of the reasons it's so clunky and so expensive is there just aren't enough American-built ships and enough American crews to man them. So it creates this Rube Goldberg machine where Chinese ships or European ships or insert country ships will dock at a port. Those items are transported to U.S. ships, and then the U.S. ships will take them in internally. So it creates a lot of hassle. So more ships on the market, more ships in the United States would definitely help the flow of commerce. It is a little bit interesting seeing as how Trump's whole pitch is to bring manufacturing back. This is more of a global trade kind of initiative, but either way, it's probably going to reduce costs for the consumer. Now, obviously, ships aren't built in a day. This is something that probably won't reap the benefits of for the next 10 years. But if this actually goes into effect, and so far, Trump has been moderately successful at implementing his visions. If this does go into effect and we have an actual office of shipbuilding and ships are getting turned out at high capacity, in 10 years, we could see a real renaissance when it comes to global trade and U.S. shipping and a major reduction in the cost of manufacturing of goods across the board. So of all initiatives, this is probably one of the strongest and the best ones that he mentioned in his State of the Union address yesterday. Last story I'm going to talk about is ADP. So ADP numbers have not been right for a long time, literally for a little over a year. I think this goes back to December of 2023. you started seeing a real divergence between ADP numbers and the Department of Labor. ADP would report one number, and the Department of Labor a couple days later would report something completely different. Sometimes they were moving in opposite directions, sometimes in the same direction. Um, I don't understand why. I don't understand why we still pay attention to it. I've tried to avoid talking about it. In this scenario, I'll talk about it for one key reason. We're still going to wait for the Labor Department's numbers to come out this Friday. I think that will be the most important thing of what happens with the U.S. economy. What are we looking at in 2025? Are we looking at a recession? Are we okay? But I will mention the ADP numbers because it's still telling of a current atmosphere. So currently, private employers added just 77,000 jobs in February. That is incredibly low. It is below the 148,000 estimate and below the 186 that we had in January. So these are February numbers. However, there is a glimmer of hope here. As I've talked about on this channel before, leisure and hospitality to me is one of the greatest indicators of a healthy economy because leisure and hospitality is disposable income. And through all these years, through all the trials and tribulations, hospitality and leisure has always led. And it's always been a strong indicator that, yeah, I think we're going to be just fine. This report is no exception. But what's interesting is it's staggeringly high. So hospitality and leisure jumped by 41,000 jobs. So you're talking about pretty much half, or more than half, of this jobs report is being led by leisure and hospitality. When the real numbers come out on Friday, if this ratio holds true, that's amazing. Because a lot of the other professions might not be adding jobs right now because of instability in the market, but not because of instability in the sector. So they might be waiting for the dust to settle before they resume normal operations. But that means they're sitting in a very comfortable position because that means money is flowing very heavily if leisure and hospitality is being this strong. So we'll see what happens on Friday, but this is a pretty powerful indicator. I don't want to say that one indicator alone could change my perspective on the entire economy. But this is a powerful indicator into the direction of changing my perspective of what 2025 could be. There's still much to be seen. There's still a lot of companies that are reporting poor guidance and poor earnings. I've noticed in my own business slowdowns in sectors that we normally don't see this time of year, but there's potential. There is still potential. So we'll see what the job numbers have on Friday. But if this is reflected, this could be a step in the right direction. That's pretty much it. Those are the stories of the day. I will actually have a video tomorrow morning, back to basics. We're going to have a morning bathrobe business, just like the good old days. It's because my schedule is a little bit shifted tomorrow afternoon. So I'll see you guys in like 12 hours, less than 12 hours, actually. So why am I even putting out a video tonight? I don't know. I'll see you guys soon. All right. Have a good night. Bye.